At 6:15 a.m. on December 7th, 1941, 183 Japanese planes take off with no radar and no communications. At 6:40, a submarine is spotted near Pearl Harbor and the U.S. troops are called to their battle stations. The USS destroyer Ward sunk the first submarine, resulting in the first Japanese deaths prior to the official war. At 7:02 a.m., radar engineers who were supposed to be getting off at 7 a.m. were waiting on a food truck. The radar sprang to life with a warning of a massive air fleet entering American airspace from the north. At 7:03, the destroyer Ward takes out another submarine. No alarm is raised, and the Ward continues on its patrol. At 7:21, news from the radar engineers up north has not reached the officials in Pearl City. At 7:55, the call comes for the normal 8 a.m. rising of the colors. The band is ready to play the national anthem. To the north, citizens have seen the massive air formations over the island for nearly 20 minutes, but assume it's our planes. The morning bugles are interrupted at Wheeler Air Force Base by torpedoes, then dive bombers. Air raid sirens replace the reveille bugles. Down in Pearl City, a family having breakfast outside reports that planes were flying so low they could see the pilots' faces. Ford Island now broadcast, "Air raid on Pearl Harbor. This is not a drill." These are the beginning moments of the day that will live in infamy.
Hello and welcome. This is a special presentation. We are here with Adam Jones, which is part of the SAEL, here at the James Dickey Post 23 American Legion. And we get the honor to speak with you about this special occasion on December 7th with Pearl Harbor. And I know that you have some things you're going to read back to us, so I'm going to go from there.
This year marks the 80th anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor, and the American Legion, the national organization of American Legion, has a prepared speech, and we'd like to go over some of the key points of that. If maybe we could take the time to read some of that now.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
December 7th, 1941 is remembered as a date of infamy, but it should also be equally recalled as a day of bravery. 15 medals of honor were awarded to the U.S. sailors as a result of the attack on Pearl Harbor. 51 Navy crosses were earned and 53 silver stars. Thousands of other acts of heroism occurred that day 80 years ago. Many of those acts were not recognized with medals because documentation was not a priority. Saving others and fighting another day in order to defeat those who brought the war had become job one. It was a tall order. 8 U.S. battleships were severely damaged during the surprise attack. 188 U.S. aircraft were destroyed, and 2,403 Americans lost their lives. Jim Lavelle served aboard the USS Whitney during the attack. "We did have a good view of everything," he said. "A mile and a half of sea looks like 150 yards on the ground because On the sea, you can see a lot further. Like the view of so many others that day, what Lavelle saw was horrifying. We saw some destroyers going out with big fires on the back of them where they had gotten hit, he recalled. The battleship Nevada was trying to get out there, burning on each end, front and back, and you could see the firemen fighting it, and they had their guns going. They made a lot of wartime movies later on, but no one could match what the scene looked like to us. Lavelle, like so many other members of the greatest generation, is gone now, but their eyewitness accounts are permanently etched in the history as Remember Pearl Harbor, because not just a war cry, but a lesson of vigilance. Upon hearing the attack, the task ahead was not lost upon British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. In all the war, I never received a more direct shock, he said. As I turned and twisted in bed, the full horror of the news sank upon me. There were no British or American capital ships in the Indian Ocean and the Pacific except the American survivors of Pearl Harbor, who had hastened back to California. Over the vast expanse of waters, Japan was supreme, and we everywhere were weak and naked. Pearl Harbor simply ignited the Pacific War for the United States. It still would have been the most consequential event of the 20th century, but it would also spark that would lead the United States to confront fascism and tyranny in Europe. World War II shaped the community of nations that exists today. The attack on Pearl Harbor was intended to bring an end to America as a major power. Instead, it was as Japanese Admiral Yamamoto feared, the awakening of a sleeping giant. 6 months later, the United States Navy and its sister branches would stage a remarkable comeback with a resounding victory over the Japanese at Midway. It was a turning point. Remember Pearl Harbor was the 20th century equivalent of Remember the Alamo, and would go on to inspire reciprocal victories by soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines yearning for payback. It would also inspire Americans to line up to military recruiting offices across the nation. It would inspire Hollywood productions, public servants, and communities throughout the United States to get behind the war effort. The American service members in Hawaii on that Sunday morning were officially non-combatants since the nation was not yet in a state of war. It did not matter to men like Dory Miller, a cook and the first black American to be awarded the Navy Cross. While serving breakfast aboard the USS West Virginia, he was alerted by the battle station's alarm and reported himself available for other duty during the attack. He carried his mortally wounded ship's captain to shelter and later fired a 50 caliber anti-aircraft gun and brought down 2 Japanese planes despite having no training on the weapon. Miller's actions were so inspiring that he later would be assigned to embark on a war bond and recruiting tour. In 1943, he made the supreme sacrifice while serving on the escort carrier Liscum Bay, a vessel that would be sunk by the Japanese submarine during the Battle of Macon. The passage of time has not been erased, the evidence of the sacrifices made. Even today, the military's Defense POW MIA accounting agencies continues to identify the remains of fallen Pearl Harbor veterans. Funerals of these heroes are still occurring in communities across the nation. The reunion of these forever young servicemen with subsequent generations of their families, often in the hometowns that they had left 80 years ago, is the embodiment of the American Legion National Commander Paul Dillard's pledge of no veteran left behind. They are not left behind, for we still remember them. The USS Arizona, launched in 1915, was one of America's first oil-fueled battleships. Small amounts of oil continued to percolate to the harbor's surface just above where the ship rests in shallow waters. The oil leaks are visible to those who visit the USS Arizona Memorial. Pearl Harbor survivors, stoic, heroic, and with great respect, were the first to christen the Arizona leakage as Black Tears. The crew that were lost on December 7, 1941 no longer feel the pain, but their tragic fate still touched those who knew them and who loved them. The Arizona is not just a memorial, it's not just a shipwreck, it's a tomb for more than 900 of the ship's 1,177 crew members who lost their lives. We must remember Pearl Harbor not just as the opening of a salvo of a long war. We must remember it as it was, an ordinary Sunday morning in which unsuspecting American service members displayed extraordinary heroism. 80 years later, we still remember them. For forgetting their heroism would be an additional act of infamy. God bless the brave souls of Pearl Harbor, and God bless America.
Again, folks, we're here at the James Dickey Post 23, James Dickey Post here in Portsmouth, Ohio, and I've had the pleasure to talk with Adam Jones over the 80th anniversary for Pearl Harbor. But one thing I want to try to recap on, or maybe get a perspective of, the perspective side of things when it came to Japan that played a part in this.
Yeah, Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor, their hopes were to destroy the United States Pacific Fleet and weaken the resolve of the American people. But instead of that happening, the exact opposite had happened. The American resolve was the exact opposite, where they had entered the war and did the exact thing that Admiral Yamamoto of Japan had said, that we had awoken a sleeping giant, and America's resolve was to enter the war instead of stay out of it. And in that case, they came in and was able to enter the war and ultimately end the war by offering the atomic bomb as a resolution to ending the war, dropping on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, ultimately ending Japan's war effort and ultimately ending the war.
So one more thing I'd like to bring up is, and moving forward, because again, this is the 80th anniversary, and again, this is before our time, but passing that message forward.
I guess the message would be is that we should never forget the supreme sacrifices that were made during the attack on Pearl Harbor, and the countless heroes that stepped up and did things that they weren't trained to do, but they were ultimately helping each other out. And on an otherwise sleepy Sunday morning that was awakened by the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, these servicemen and women were able to step up and do things that were extraordinary. It should never be forgotten. We should always be aware of the supreme sacrifices that were made.
And then just to finish up here again, went with Adam Jones here at the American Legion in Portsmouth, Ohio at Post 23. And what room are we sitting in right now, Adam?
We're in the James R. Sadler Veterans Hall, and named after James Sadler, who was a member here, past commander, past 7th District commander. He was with the Portsmouth Fire Department, and he was a great veteran, great person. He loved his community, loved being a veteran, and he and his wife created the nursing home veterans party that is here annually, and that's coming up on us pretty soon. So we'd like to thank James for his service to the country, and we thank him.
And to all of you. Yeah.
And to all of you, thank you.
All right, guys. So again, if you get the opportunity, please feel free to share this. And from all of us here at Scioto County Daily News, where progress inspires change. Again, 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, and also have a peaceful and Merry Christmas.